I'm Zane, and this is Ed. We're both students, design students at Glasgow School of Art. And we'll begin very shortly.
Okay, so we pitched this idea, or non-idea, at the very beginning. This is the very end of the slideshow. I don't know where that is.
Moment, please.
Sorry? And that will be the beginning. Hey. Okay, so yeah. I pitched the non-idea of, I had no idea, I had no concept, we just wanted to see what happens. We just wanted to go out and talk to the public and take the advice of all the great professionals we had here and see what could come of it. That's backwards.
So this was kind of our sort of starting question, how can we trust, use trust and the perception of safety to have a tangible effect on the rates of crime in Glasgow? And this is kind of like the starting point, the broken glass theory. So this is generally basically the idea that one small crime will lead to another and so on. And it's basically about the communication between the individual and the landscape. So an environment that's poorly maintained or abused or has a reputation for crime, a bad reputation for crime, it sends a signal that the area is not monitored, that crime is likely to go unpunished. And Glasgow kind of has quite a big problem with this. I mean, I'm from England, Ed's from Wales, and the first thing you hear about Glasgow is, the crime, which we so far haven't actually witnessed. But it has a problem with this reputation. It's across the UK and it's self-perpetuating. So this is what our proposal challenges. We want to improve the perception of crime in Glasgow.
And so this is our final concept. This is called Good Deed Glasgow. Whoops. And what it is essentially is capturing all the positive things that happen and putting them together in one place and mapping the location in which they are sent. We're using pre-existing platforms such as Twitter, social media outlets, and using just a simple hashtag Good Deed Glasgow to bring all these things together. They will come together onto a web app, and also, we would like to use interactive screens, which have seemed popular today, introduced to tourist points in Glasgow, and they would show a constant live update of good deeds.
So we sort of started prototyping this in the studio, and then we took it out to members of the public and let them loose in it. And we got some really good feedback that helped us develop the concept further.
We found other bits of street furniture just down the road where this, thing could be placed, and placed it on there and had a look, see how it felt. Did it feel right? And then we moved straight on to designing the user interface, which we wanted to keep very simple, just to point out the places where these messages come in and key messages that kind of animate while people aren't interacting with the interactive screens. This also features as like a web app, like I said, which can be viewed on a mobile phone. It's just a responsive website. We didn't want to build a single, app for the mobile because we just believe that there's not that much usage for it as an app, but it'd be a great web app. And so you can view all the good deeds in a day view, a monthly view, or you can view them all at the same time and get a good overview of good things happening. The primary function of this is it raises perception of safety in Glasgow. It makes crime more remote, less expected, less acceptable. The project is the opposite to the broken glass theory.
And it also makes people aware of others in their area, what's going on. They can get networks of trust starting to form. So people will look out for each other and reduce the opportunity for crime to occur in the first place.
And it engages people with their local environment, promotes the eyes on the street. So the more people watching the street, the more kind of awareness there are about people, looking out, the less opportunity for crime. So we created a few scenarios just to put this into context. The first being Jenny, the student. She's from Belfast and she's 19 and moving to Glasgow for the first time. And she's a bit anxious about moving to the city. She's heard some good stories, she's heard some bad stories. She doesn't really know the area she's living in, but soon after moving there, she ventured out and she found one of these interactive screens, and she quickly got a feeling for, the positive messages and positive things happening around her. And she could also use the interactive screens to kind of navigate her around the city and, find out what areas are like.
Okay, so this is another scenario. Alison's sort of like been living in her local area for like 4 or 5 years, but until recently hadn't really got to know any of her neighbours at all that well. But through like this app and the screens in the corner of her street, she started to get a bit of a better feel for the area and is more confident. She never would have gone out by herself at night or go to the corner shop after dark for milk. But now she knows she can tap on her neighbour's door and tell them just to keep an eye out for her. And she, feels a lot more confident.
So we haven't got much time for this presentation, but we had made within this project is a kind of a blueprint of how this would be rolled out with an introduction, like a publicity scheme to make people aware of it.
And we're out of time. But questions, please?
I like the positive reinforcement of the behind the idea, but how could you prevent people, maybe abusing the system? These sort of
In what way?
Well, I mean, you could have. I'm sure lots of Glaswegians could have quite a lot of fun. Posting witty messages about situations.
Yeah, we did. We took this into mind when I was writing out the blueprint for the service, and we kind of had in mind one employee who'd be one person who'd be employed, and to filter through all the tweets, but also to have some sort of filter inbuilt to the kind of the way the website works, so that it'll filter out certain language. And there's also, on each of the things that pop up, the messages that pop up, an opportunity to flag something. If something does sneak through, that is deemed to be not nice.
Is there a risk that in poorer areas of Glasgow, where there's lower smartphone ownership, that they become stigmatised by the lack of good deeds in their area that are visible?
Okay, so there's kind of, we thought about that as well. So firstly, you can, if you don't have a Twitter account or you don't have an internet connection, you can go to one of the screens on the street and you can post from there using the Good Deed Glasgow Twitter account. So firstly, it doesn't entirely alienate people, but also seeing this is kind of like a future hack thing, we were kind of looking to the future slightly. And 10 years ago, a number of people with smartphones or broadband connections or even dial-up, it was a fraction of what it is today. And that is going to get, more and more people are going to have it. Also, in many European countries, there is what's called digital rights. So in countries like Portugal, France, Finland, Spain, it's part of, it's written into the constitution that it's considered a human right to have a certain level of internet connection. And that's a growing trend. So we see in the next couple of years, that being even less of a problem than it is today. But like we say, in the meantime, there is that kind of measure to deal with that.
Fairly simple question. I was just going to ask to what extent had you used the data sets that were produced in advance of this weekend?
We use them. There's a lot of the development that doesn't feature in the presentation. We're just pitching the idea. But a lot of the sort of testing or sort of investigating what was there already that might improve perceptions of safety, a lot of that was done using the data set. So for example, we were looking at CCTV technology. CCTV cameras, it's pretty old. But so when we were out on the street, we asked someone, what about CCTV cameras? Do they make you feel safer? And they said, no, they put CCTV cameras in areas where there's trouble. So there's this perception that, they're there to sort of like flag crime rather than to, make you feel safer. So we went on to the open source data and we started looking at, stuff like crime rates, areas of deprivation in relation to CCTV placement. And we found that there wasn't really a clear correlation that we could identify. I mean, there might have been one, it's probably beyond our sort of analytical skills. But there was no real clear correlation. So we used it to test, what people were saying to us on the street, whether or not that was valid, and it was used a lot in the development of this concept.
Hi. So, getting to the crux of it, it's basically hashtag mapping.
Simple ideas.
Yeah, that's what I was going to follow up with. I think it's brilliant. I think the way you've turned the broken glass theory that Murray presented on Friday around is excellent. And Stuart behind has worked with me for a long enough time now, so he knows that I like simple ideas, very, very simple. They almost always are the best. But I do think you need to address the fact that we live in Glasgow. Glaswegians are pranksters. And you will get a lot of, I wouldn't say abusive responses, but there'll be a lot of overly sarcastic things in there. And I don't think this is a pure technology solution. I think this requires some human interaction with the management of it to take out the obvious little pranks that I'm sure will come along.
I do think some of the wit that would come through would, provide a bit of a quirk that people would, find a nice attachment to, and it could be kind of like it could to build a reputation on being a place where you can go and have a little bit of a laugh as well as, see some good things happening.
Yeah, it's also such simple technology as well. Within 6 hours of it going live, you would have a spoof site up, which would be Bampot Glasgow or something like that, which would...
I suppose the sort of distribution of data maybe will curtail that horrible eventuality from happening.
6 hours.
But also, we're not just talking about, good deeds, helping people with shopping and so on. That might, that will come into it. But it's about, sort of people in your area that, brighten up your day, whether they be characters or, witty things that you've heard that day. It doesn't just have to be sort of, helping you shopping. So I think it ties into sort of the Glasgow spirit as well of wit and,
And the people make Glasgow.
Yeah, people make Glasgow, man.
We did actually check out the People Make Glasgow tag on Twitter, and it's already starting to build a bit of a reputation for giving positive outlooks on the city. So
Not it's not so much a question about your presentation, just one aspect of it that kind of chimed with some of the other presentations. And I just wondered if at Future Hacks, since you kind of mentioned that phrase earlier, I wondered if at Future Hacks teams would not choose women only as case studies in a public safety presentation.
See, we actually had a bit of a problem earlier when we presented to Murray because we went about 15 minutes, so we sort of hacked out that last minute, I'm afraid. We had about sort of like 4 or 5 case studies that were, much more mixed. But I think just in the rush of time, we sort of, maybe
Wait for the obvious one.
Just didn't make the right calls.
we actually chose the first and the second one, and then
It's very
ditched the
simple.
rest.